In today's business world, being an average CEO is no longer an option. That's why we're committed to equipping you with the resources and the tactics necessary to not just survive, but to thrive. You're listening to Not Your Average CEO Lifeline podcast, where we are more than just a voice in the crowd.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Not Your Average CEO Lifeline. Today with us, I have Steve Blue, and we're going to be talking about silent killers in your business. So I think this is going to be a really interesting topic. Steve, can you share a little bit to our listeners, a little bit about yourself, your background, and where you are today?
Sure. I'm a CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. That's sort of like my primary thing. And I've been a CEO in this company for 26 years. Prior to that, I was a divisional P&L manager for $1 billion division of Rockwell International. And then before that, I was in marketing and sales. And so I've sort of been around. I tell people I'm not that smart, but I've been around a long time. So I've like seen everything. And so that's where I form the platform, if you will, or the basis of what I write about. I'm a professional speaker. I've given keynote addresses to the United Nations, Harvard Business School, just to name a few. And I'm a best-selling author of 5 books. The 6th will come out in a month or two that I co-authored with Jack Canfield, the Chicken Soup for the Soul creator. And
Yes.
my guess is that'll be a bestseller kind of right away. And so that's kind of 6 books under my belt. So I all of my experiences as a senior leader and as a CEO is how I form the basis of everything I write. I write for Industry Week, Fortune Magazine, Forbes, Business Week. I often contribute to those publications.
Oh, that's wonderful. So you certainly have a wealth of experience. And so we're really glad that you're here today so we can pick your brain a little bit. So as you've seen all of these businesses over your decades in business and different stages and different sizes of businesses, what have you seen that are early warning signs for business that the health of the business is at risk? And as we talk about that, if you can share how just a regular CEO or leader could identify those risks without having the experience that you do.
You know, I've written about silent and not so silent business killers a bunch of times over the years. And I started the first one about 10 or 15 years ago, where the analogy that I drew was high blood pressure is a silent killer. And it is a silent killer if you don't monitor it and check the metrics and therefore do something and control it. Businesses can be exactly the same way. And the fundamental problem and what causes businesses to die, at least at the beginning, is nobody's minding the store. Now, by that, I mean really, really, really watching the numbers closely. I am anal about the numbers. I'll tell you, I look at order intake every single day as an example. And if 2 days in a row, the order intake is, and then I compare it to last year at this time, and the year before that at this time, and the year before that at this time. And if I have 2 days worth of weird or unusual numbers, especially if they're low, then I start asking my team why. I want to know why. A lot of people, a lot of CEOs don't watch that closely. And one of the biggest problems that I see with CEOs is they let everybody else do everything, and they just sort of sit around the top playing golf and sort of looking good. And that's where it starts, Danielle, when people don't watch the business carefully. And it starts insidiously and almost minutely, usually with the margins are maybe a half a point off where they were that last year or the year before. And they shouldn't be half a point. They should never be a half a point lower than they were last year or last month, unless you did something intentionally, like a price drop or whatever, to create that. And then, so it sort of goes unnoticed. It was only half a point, no big deal. And then, a month or two later, it's another half a point. No, it's no big deal. It'll come back. And that's where the whole thing starts, by almost always with drops in margins. because that's what the outside world is telling you. Now, the inside world, you've got costs and operating expenses and all that. But if your margins drop and you didn't do anything intentionally, the outside world is telling you there's a problem with your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So sort of, what you're saying in your experience is that you're not seeing CEOs and other leaders take a close enough look at the numbers. It seems like you have to be, for lack of a better term, obsessive with them on a daily basis and keeping track of them so that they're not getting away from you.
Obsessive is the right word. And people, I've been running this one company, the same company, for 26 years. And some people will say, well, you can do that with your eyes closed. No, actually, I can't. If I want to sit back and not pay close attention, I guess I could with my eyes closed, but I still obsess over all the numbers. And there's only 3 or 4 key metrics that lead to problems in the rest of the business. And it starts with, as I said, it starts with the margins. And then if you look at your cost structure, particularly your manufacturing costs, if you're a manufacturer, if that starts creeping up and if that's not continually going down, that signifies a problem in the inside of the business. And if you don't catch it early enough, Danielle, it becomes much more difficult, if not impossible, to correct later on.
Yeah, I can see that creating a big problem. I know that in your work you talk about the 6 silent business killers. Can you share with our audience what those 6 are?
Yeah, probably, well, I guess one's not more important than another, but one that I see most often is if people make nice, I say they make nice in the meetings. So we're in a meeting, right? And whatever the subject may be, and there's no conflict, there is no debate, there is no argument. Everyone's, yeah. That's the first sign that there's something wrong. Because if you're in a meeting discussing business conditions or business opportunities or whatever, and nobody's debating with each other, that just tells me people just want to get out of that meeting and get on with their life. And a subset of that, Danielle, and I hate this, they don't do it in my team, but I've seen in other teams where they go, let's take this offline. Well, that's code word for we don't want the boss to know there's any problems here. We don't want the boss to know there's any conflict here. And so if we take it offline, it means they never do anything about it. They just get it away from the boss because people think, and sometimes they're correct, that the boss doesn't like conflict, when in fact a leader should actually invite conflict, which is another part of a silent business killer. Where there's no conflict in the business, that's a big problem. And the CEO has to not only invite conflict, but make it mandatory. That, some people have said to me, oh, no, so you want everybody to fight all the time. No, it's not what I said. I said you have to invite conflict, but it has to be productive conflict. You don't just throw people in the pool that never swam before and hope they don't drown. You bring in professionals to teach the principles of conflict resolution so it can be dealt with productively as opposed to destructively. And that's probably the second most important thing I've seen. Third one is when your sales people work for the customer. Now that's a problem. And it's easy for a salesperson because they're out there, right? And they play golf with the customers. They want to have good relations with the customers. I got all that. But when it comes to raising prices, as an example, they're often reticent to do that. Mm-hmm. Why? Because it's their buddies. And they don't want to, make their buddies upset, and they don't want to jeopardize the relationship and all that. And you have to be careful that your salespeople understand and behave like they work for the company, not for the customer. And I've seen too many businesses where the sales guy could care less about the company. Honestly, what they really cared about was the customer, and that's a really big problem. So those are kind of the 3 major ones. Years ago, I used to say, if your company isn't doing business globally, that's a problem. A lot of companies like to hide in the United States, and maybe to some degree they still do. In the last couple of years, especially post-pandemic, a lot of companies are pulling back from international business, particularly China, and I think that's a mistake. And then I probably would think that the most important one that I haven't mentioned yet is if you're not innovating in your business, let's assume you're a manufacturer. It doesn't matter. You can be a distributor, any kind of business. If you're not innovating on a constant basis, then you're losing opportunities to advance the business, and you're also losing opportunities that your competition might pick up on and might be able to do something about. So innovation is very important. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say I'd like to talk more about innovation, but certainly finish your thought there.
It's a skill that can be learned.
Mm-hmm.
If your company is not very innovative now or not innovative at all, my company has been very innovative for many years, but a number of years ago, I felt it needed to supercharge that. So the first thing I did, and you'll think this is wild, which is why you're talking to me. You want to hear wild ideas. I brought in the ex-chief creativity officer of the, what is the home shopping network? QVC network.
Oh, yeah.
And people go, huh? And now he has his own consulting firm where he teaches people, the principles of innovation. People go, huh? Why would you bring, that's like a network to buy shoes on, or I don't know. Why would you think that guy could teach you guys anything? Well, as a matter of fact, he can. So I brought him in, and he started with the very basic fundamentals with the entire workforce, not just the engineers, not just the marketeers, the factory people as well, because they can play a role in innovating, reducing costs, introducing new methods in the manufacturing process. And so he came in, and for about 6 months, he'd be in here once a week, teaching everybody from the ground up, beginning with brainstorming, and then he'd give them little assignments to do and problem-solving things, and then he would evaluate how they did it and offer ways to improve. And then then he left, and we were done with him, and people were sort of doing it on their own. And one day I'm walking through the factory, and somebody comes up to me and says, we really like this innovation stuff. We could do it better if we had a dedicated space where we didn't do anything but ideate. And so I looked at him and I said, let me make sure I get this right. You want me to take a space in my building that is now making money, and you want me to turn it into a think tank? And about that time, he's thinking, oh, boy. But I said, I love it. So I spent $500,000 on a space right in the middle of the factory, because this is not a white-collar space. It's not a blue-collar space. It's an all-collar space. And it's very high-tech, very enabled, and facilitates creativity. And people go in there whenever they want. They don't need anybody's permission, and they can work on whatever they want, and they do. And so they end up finding the problems that maybe no one else even knows are there, and they go in and solve the problems all on their own. I get a lot of questions about, excuse me, the money you spend on that. Well, where's the beef? And the fact is, some really big, super ideas have come out of that space that I know of course, because I have to fund them, and a million little ideas that add up to big ideas over everything from improvements in the factory to innovations and new product development.
Oh, that's really exciting. I think it's very clear that you have built quite a culture of innovation in your work. And so I agree with you that innovation obviously is really important. But how do you incorporate that into your company culture? How do you incorporate that for your team members? And
it's a good question. First of all, you make it a job requirement. It's not optional. It's not, if you feel like innovating, or if you're the engineers, of course you innovate. If you're the marketeers, yeah, you probably innovate. But everyone, it's built into their job description that they will provide a certain amount of innovation. Now, you don't just jump in with that because people have never done that before. Go, oh boy, I'll be getting fired pretty soon because it's a job requirement and I don't know how to do it. You've got to instruct them and support them and enhance what they do. But after a while, it has to be an absolute job requirement that everyone participates in the process of innovation. Everyone. Some people will contribute more than others. Some people will have some terrific ideas, and some people won't have any at all. And that's okay. The idea is that everyone has to participate. And some people think that someone working in a factory would jump at the idea of being able to be part of an innovation team. But you know what? Some people that work in factories don't want anything to do with that. They want to check their brains at the door and then take their brains back when they go to the bowling alley. And that's what you'll find in a lot of factories. So not everybody thinks that's such a cool idea. So you have to be careful. And this is part of it in our interviewing and hiring practices. We make sure that the people that join us are able to participate in that kind of culture and want to participate in that kind of culture. And the way we do that is by peer interviewing. As an example, if you're going to work in the factory, the supervisor, so per se, interviews you, of course, but you get in a room with the team that you would work with, and they interview you as well. And at the end of the day, the team either says, yep, that's a person that would fit well with our team, or nope, this person is not. And if you don't pass that test, you don't get hired.
Yeah. So it seems like for you that one of the ways that you built this culture of innovation is really starting in the hiring process and the interview process and the job description.
You have to, Danielle, because once you've gone to the hard work of actually creating what I call a culture by design and not by default, because as you know, every organization has a culture. They're either by default or they're by design. And if you go to all the work and all the trouble and all the expense of creating culture by design, you have to maintain it. You have to nurture it. And the last thing you ever want to do is let anybody in the door that doesn't want to be part of that culture.
Yeah, I really like that because I've heard, over my years in business, all sorts of, tips and strategies to build a strong culture of innovation. But I haven't heard, and you were the first, I think this makes a lot of sense, that it starts in the job description. It's not something that you do after the person's already been there a few weeks.
It can't be optional. Just, I'm sorry, businesses are not democracies. So it can't be optional. You don't get to choose that I'm not going to do this. And we know that kind of person when we hire them by the structure of the questions that they get asked. How do you feel about what you did in your last? And what did you do when you had a problem? And if that person says, well, I go see my union rep, that tells you a lot about the person. But it all starts with hiring. By the way, I haven't had any trouble in hiring anybody in the last couple of years. I know there's a labor shortage. I know that, all of that. And in my town, there's an even bigger labor shortage. I don't have any problem because we have a terrific reputation and image in town, not only for what we allow people to do and the participatory nature of it, but we're also big into philanthropy in the community. And I think that's important because you should give back to where you earn your money. And also that helps to attract that image of philanthropy helps to attract the kind of person that we want working for us. Someone who's interested in that is in my view, a better employee, a more productive employee than someone that just soon be in the bowling alley.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really, really interesting stuff you have to share. So I'd love to hear, we ask this of all of our guests because the title of our podcast is Not Your Average CEO. And I think it's very clear that you are not average in all the work that you've done over the years. So what do you think that means to you? What does it mean to be not your average CEO and all the innovation that you've done?
Yeah, I have a phrase I've coined that isn't exactly that, but it's basically your average CEO clings to the past. Your extraordinary CEO embraces the future. Now, CEOs tend to cling to the past because it's worked, it's tried and true. If you're going to do something different than what you've already always done, you're going to get resistance. Your board won't like it. Shareholders won't like it. Your employees won't like it. Your customers may not like it. And it entails a lot of work. However, just standing still and clinging to the past, as I put it, is guaranteed for failure. And we could go down the list of companies that refuse to change and refuse to innovate and were insistent on clinging to the past. Kodak is just one big example. They didn't want to move away from film, paper film, whatever you call it. They didn't want to go into digital film, even though they knew digital film was the future. They didn't want to move toward it. And so they clung to the past. And before you know it, they were just out of business. And to me, that's the difference between an ordinary and an extraordinary CEO. And that's the job of a CEO. The CEO's job is to take chances, make unpopular decisions, take flack every now and again because people didn't like it or because it didn't work. And I could tell you, I have a really bad average on my decisions. I really do. I mean, if I look at, as an example, all the product launches I got behind and said, yeah, this is it, let's go. I'm about maybe 30%. I don't know. Were killer successes, and the other 70% were absolute failures. But you don't know. Your opinion is worthless. No offense. My opinion is worthless too. You don't know what will work and what won't work until you get it out into the real world and let the real world decide.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think you also forgot one piece that is the job of the CEO that we talked about is being obsessive about the numbers.
Absolutely. I mean, you just have to be. And if you are, everybody else will be too.
Yes.
My team knows the orders report comes out every single day. It's supposed to be 5 o'clock on the button, but it's between 5 o'clock and 5:10 every single day. And if I don't have that orders report by 5:15, I'm sending out an email to my senior leaders asking where it is. And that sends a signal to them that I'm very obsessed with the numbers, and therefore they should be too, because people take their cues from the leaders at the top.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it was so nice speaking with you today, Steve. You certainly, I learned a lot from you, and I hope that our audience does too. I think you had just great insights. And so we'll also include in the show notes how folks can get a hold of you, how they can learn about your books. I know you mentioned that one is coming out shortly, so we'll include all of that in the show notes. But thank you very much for being with us.
Fantastic. It was great being with you.
Yes, thank you.
You've been listening to Not Your Average CEO Lifeline with your hosts Danielle Cuomo, CEO, and Nicole Glitchio, Els, COO. This podcast has been sponsored by Virtual Assist USA. If you'd like to know more about the hosts or exploring virtual assistant services, visit virtualassistusa.com for more information.